Hello everybody, welcome to my crash course on interior design, but a technical guide. So first things first, my name is Amy and I'm a library associate here at the Lilburn branch, and today I'm going to be doing sort of a mini crash course on interior design, but more or less on the technical side of things. So before coming here to work at the library, I actually worked at a design agency that focused on early education remodeling and rebranding, and I also went to school for interior design. So I know that, interior designing is really expensive, especially if it's just a side project that you wanted to work on. Let's say remodeling your kitchen, retiling your floors, or anything of that sort. So from a designer's point of view, I kind of want to reteach those same concepts that I learned in school and in the working design field in simpler terms so that you can use that same information to improve your day-to-day living. Okay, so before I actually jump into any information, I kind of want to share the purpose of this program. The first thing is that I want to provide you all a background as to why interior designing is important at all. The second thing is the technical things that happen in the process of interior designing. And the third is where to begin as a student if you're interested in learning more about the design field, or if you're looking to, let's say, major in interior design or any sort of design in college or wherever that may be. And then it could just be for a casual enthusiast. So like I said, if you're just interested in doing this as a side project to improve your home, for an example. So there will be a lot of technical information that I'm going to present, and I don't really want this to scare you, but instead I just want to show you how interior design is more than just, let's say, the pretty presentations that you see on magazines and home improvement TV shows. Okay, so let's just take a moment. For the most part, what do you all usually think of when you hear of the term interior design, or design really in general? I think I have a sort of kind of understanding of what most people would usually think of when they hear the word interior design. I feel like most of it comes from design magazines that you might see, people with these minimalistic and super cool, sleek looking layouts for their homes or apartments. Or maybe you have seen videos on YouTube, or maybe home improvement TV shows or reality TV shows if you're into watching those. So this is an example that maybe it's something that you first thought of when you heard the term interior design. This is more of a minimalistic look, very simple, plain, a few pops of colors, of pinks and blues here and there. But for the most part, everything is very neutral, very natural. But yeah, this is a pretty popular sort of look nowadays. Or maybe this is something that you might have thought of. This is very popular in concentric city areas like New York, Atlanta. If people are interested in living in an apartment, but they kind of want that second floor type of feel to it. It's still very minimalistic, very limited color palette, lots of grays and whites and neutral colors, little pops of natural greens and browns here and there. But for the most part, again, very minimalistic. And this is the last example. This is something a little leaning more towards the traditional side, but again, still minimalistic. Not that many textures going on, very limited color palette as well, browns, whites, a few, grays here and there. But I feel like these three are pretty common examples of something that you might think of when you hear the term interior design, right? Okay, so while these three that I have just showed you are in fact interior design, but like I said, those are more on, let's say, the visual spectrum of it, what the general public would usually see. The term interior designing is the process of enhancing the interior of a building, whether that can be your home, an office, it could be a home office or a commercial office, a big box store like Walmart or Target, or maybe a hotel. But you're trying to achieve an overall healthier and more aesthetically pleasing environment for the people that are encompassing that space. So what does this really mean? So there's the decorating aspect of interior design, like the one that you have seen, the ones in those magazines and TV shows. But there's also the knit and grit of it. So it ranges from choosing wall paint colors that coordinate with, let's say, your door and window trims. And then there's removing or adding in walls to create more either public or private spaces. And then there's choosing furniture that actually fits the style for the client or you, for an example, or just finding light fixtures that are more energy efficient. It could be simple as that. And then, of course, there's a more complicated process where you're actually planning and breaking down things, and which that would be called the planning phase. So, for the most part, the term interior designing is more associated with the technical aspects of planning, whereas interior decorating is the visual side that you would usually see. So, the technical programming process of interior design consists of 5 steps. There's emphasize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. When you emphasize, usually first acknowledge what you're doing. Are you changing the tile in your bathroom? Are you removing an old couch from the family room? Different projects have different needs, so you're going to have to understand the why you are doing something. Then you can shape the what should I do after that. And then the next step, defining a project, is basically that what. What am I going to do? Knowing that I have to repaint the walls in my bedroom. Should I buy some paint? If I am buying some paint, what paint color should it be? What sheen level is it? How much will it cost? All these questions that come up. And then while you're defining, you're also going to be doing a little bit of ideating, coming up with different scenarios, backup plans in case your first choice fails, and maybe address other problems that come up along the way. So in the example of the paint, maybe you have bought this paint and then you tried it on, a little piece of wood, for an example, and then it's taking days for it to actually dry and look the way that it's supposed to look. So that's an issue that can come up along the way. And as you're set with your ideas, then theoretically it'd be best if you could perform some sort of prototyping, like that painting on the piece of wood that I had just mentioned for the painting example. So I know that for, let's say, Sherwin-Williams, I know that if you were to take a picture of your space, so your bedroom or living room, wherever that may be, and you were to upload that picture onto the Sherwin-Williams website, you can actually choose from their swatch of paint colors, and then they would apply that color onto your wall. The website just automatically detects it, and then you can see if it works out for your room or not. So that's a nice little thing to look into if you're working on these small little projects, so that you can save money in the long run, because you don't want to paint your walls and then it turns out that it doesn't look right, whereas you can just use this website, use the tools that are already there, and then see if it works or not, and then you don't have to waste buying 5 containers of paint to paint your walls. But let's say for bigger renovation projects, like you're breaking down an entire building to rebuild a hotel. So for many architects and designers, they actually work together to create models to mimic their design, but let's say in a smaller form, because you don't want to build a whole hotel that's like 50 floors to scale, because that's really expensive and you won't really have the materials to do all of that. So it's nice to just scale things down, let's say by a 16th or something, just see if things work out or not. And for the most part, the point of the model is to see if you can work out the kinks. And like I said in the example of trying out the paint, it's to save money in the long run and see that, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Oh, if it doesn't work, then I can fix it from here. And finally, after when you're done with prototyping, you would execute your idea, basically to make it happen. For the most part, if you're thorough with the previous 4 steps, it should work out 100%. The way that you want it to be. Sometimes little mishaps happen here and there, like leakage or drain issues that you need to fix. So it's kind of inevitable that these things happen. You just have to be very open-minded about it and accepting and understanding that, okay, this is going to come up, so I have to fix it somehow. Okay. So the way things work with designers is that while they're jotting down the notes for these things, for the planning phase that I've just gone over, They also plan by using different modeling and sketching techniques. So usually they'd first begin with interviewing the client. So that would be you if you're remodeling your home. And then they'd come up with something called bubble diagrams to understand the relationship between spaces that they're actually going to be working with. So if you're remodeling your kitchen, that might affect your living room, it might affect a guest bedroom. They have to keep in mind all those adjacent spaces. And you just have to know, where things should go based on the client's needs, because sometimes the client might not really want that living room to be right there. They might want to shift it somewhere completely different. And then after coming up with something that makes sense from the bubble diagrams, designers would then create a number of sketches of floor plans to see if the client likes any of them and if they like certain aspects of different plans, and they can kind of merge that together into one finalized floor plan. And then, those sketches would be taken to the clients give the okay, and then designers then create models to make sure that things work out for the clients. And then once again, if the clients are for sure that, yes, this is exactly what I want for my home or exactly what I want for my office, then the designers then draft up a more finalized floor plan. Now, this is a lot of planning, but all of this planning is to make sure that the project goes the way it's supposed to go. Because in the case that, let's say, you're retiling your kitchen, that could cost easily from $1,000 to several thousands of dollars. So you want to make sure things go right the first time around, so you're not wasting your time, the designer's time, your money, the designer's money. It's just better for the long run. Okay, so after these floor plans are created and the models are also made, a lot of designers like to create renderings. And renderings are basically realistic 3D perspectives to give a client an idea of what they're paying for. So let's say the client wants this type of furniture in their kitchen, then you can kind of go into this program and then find this furniture or model this furniture, put it in the space, and then does the client like it after you show it to them? And if they do, then you execute it. Buy that furniture, put it in their space. That's easy as it gets. And this stuff can actually differ between, firm to firm or designer to designer. But for the most part, most firms start off with flat 2D floor plan line drawings. Then they turn them into 3D perspectives, either by hand sketching or computer programming. And then they plug it into another program if the first program doesn't have the functionalities to make it realistic, but that's exactly what happens. So in this first picture that you see at the top, that's a 3D perspective from a floor plan. So let's say on the floor plan, the designer drew, let's say, I think it looks like 8 chairs and then a table. And so after that, they sketch it and it turns into this 3D drawing. They import that drawing into another program. Either it can be, let's say, Photoshop, or if they actually want to model the individual walls and furniture pieces, they can put it into other programs like Revit, 3ds Max, Lumion, SketchUp. There are a bunch of programs out there that designers use. So speaking of which, the most common program that designers use, and engineers even, for drafting floor plans, creating those flat 2D drawings, is AutoCAD. And AutoCAD is great because everything you draw is exactly to scale, and in a way, it's kind of like a universal language. So you don't have to kind of decipher 50 different ways how a door should look. So if I draw something here, and I'm, let's say, remodeling someone's house, and I draw this door and then a couple walls around it. If I send this floor plan to someone who's living across the world, I don't know, in like the UK or something, they should understand exactly what I'm trying to convey without having to call me and ask, is this a wall? Is this a door? So that's the magic of the program. And then after drafting the floor plans, that whole drafting phase, the 3D perspective is commonly made in another program called Revit. It's also part of the same family of Autodesk. And with Revit, you use your AutoCAD file of the flat 2D floor plan drawings. You trace over it with, walls, windows, or light files in the Revit program, and it actually adds those things automatically into the program as 3D dimensional objects. And the only thing you really have to do in Revit is to add this camera function and, angle it where you want to see it, and then it automatically creates this perspective. So in the first image that you see, that's the trace of the AutoCAD file. So you have these eight chairs that looks like, and then there's a table in the middle with some bottles and cups on top of the table. And then the red arrow is pointing to the camera view. And after you point that camera view, you get this bottom picture here, which is a perspective of the space. And this is super convenient because if you're showing this to a client, they can gauge and see, oh, maybe the space is a little too tight. Can you like loosen things up, or maybe we should take a chair out? Or if it's like way too big, then oh, okay, we need to like shrink down the walls, add more things in the space. So it's a nice kind of thing, a tool to have for clients to see if what the ideas that they're coming up with, if it's working or not. And then this is a super cool gift that I found where it shows quite nicely the different things that you can add into Revit. So there are the walls, roofs, furniture, light fixtures, windows. You can add scenery like trees and grass outside, flooring, counter pieces, all that good stuff. Okay, and lastly, I would call this the almost pretty phase. It varies kind of between designer to designer and then firm to firm. But the program that I learned in school for this was another Autodesk program. It's called 3ds Max. And I really wanted to show you all this in real time, but unfortunately, these programs are super expensive if you're not a student or working in a design company. But these are real life examples. So this is as realistic as it can get. You can have it very flat 3D perspectives if the client wants that, or if the client wants something to see, how would it look like if it was like, let's say early in the morning. How would my kitchen look early in the morning? And then you can use this program, adjust the light source from the outdoors, add some interior lighting, and then the client will see, oh, it works, or nope, it doesn't. And then you'll change things up if it doesn't work. And then this program, 3ds Max, it also lets you take what Revit, the 3D perspectives that we were talking about, you import it into this program, and then it takes whatever color or texture, paint, or design that you can find on Google as like an image. And then after you apply it into the program, it kind of retiles that image, and then you can see exactly how it would look like if you had actually replicated the space in real time. So let's say you choose this chair, and then on Google, let's say through a company, you find this really nice fabric, and then you're wondering, oh, would it really look good on my chair or not? So you can just download that image, apply it to that chair file into this 3ds Max program, and then if it looks good, then you're like, okay, I should order that chair. And if it doesn't, then you can find another fabric type without having to actually buy the physical chair for like $1,000, and then it doesn't work out. Then you're like, oh no, what do I do with this $1,000 chair? Okay, so I talked a lot about the cool things you can do to a basic floor plan, but how do you know what should even go on the actual floor plan itself? So the general rule of thumb for the majority of designs follow the concept of zones. You have your social or public zones, and then the semi-public zones, and then the semi-private zones, and then of course finally the private zones. So the public zone is pretty straightforward because when you first enter a home, or let's say a hotel for an example, what you want to see first are the spaces that everyone can easily pass through, which are the public zones. Either those can be family rooms, foyers, reception areas if it's a commercial space, or other common spaces that help you transition from the exterior, let's say outside, to the entrance, and then finally to inside of the actual building or structure that you're trying to go into. And then from there, you would gradually transition to spaces that are a little more specific, like living rooms or breakfast rooms. And then these are spaces that you still wouldn't really mind if people step foot into, and it's, not a big bother at all. And then from that, you can guess that you're only going to get a little bit more private in terms of spaces from there. The semi-private spaces are kind of like your safe spaces to get away from people. So, you have offices, maybe home gyms if your house can afford that, and maybe for commercial spaces, that would be conference rooms because, you don't want people stepping all over when you're having a conference. And then lastly, for the private zones, that would most definitely be more towards bedrooms, bathrooms, private enclosed offices that you don't want people kind of just walking into. Basically, areas that you're not really comfortable with people kind of just like intrude on, unless you give them permission, of course. And my biggest take on this concept is that you should prioritize the function of the space over the form. You want a comfortable living space first, and then you choose all the pretty things that go inside of it or on the walls or wherever. You don't want to have a master bedroom in front of a house, because then let's say if you have an unknown guest over and they might accidentally walk in to your bedroom and you're just like, oh no, now they see that I haven't done my bed. It's kind of very inconvenient and embarrassing at times. And then let's say in the example where it's a commercial space, a president of a company, if his office is right at the entrance of the building, that'd be pretty inconvenient, because what if the press usually comes by or people are bombarding him with questions or something? It's just not convenient, and you should understand that you should divide your spaces in terms of, this is public so it stays in the front, this is private so it goes towards the back, or if you have a upstairs, that's where it would go. Okay, now to switch gears a little bit, after you've settled on, the formulation of your space, where things should go and what should go in each space, you're going to have to consider what goes on the ceilings of your spaces and on the walls. And the main things that go on those are lights. So there are two main types of lighting that are considered in interior design. There's natural lighting, which comes from the sun, and then there's artificial lighting, which is just electric light that's man-made. So this is a nice little GIF showing the movement of the sun during various times during the day, so you can kind of get a sense of what the light might feel or look like from a certain direction. And natural light comes from the four cardinal directions. You got, north, south, east, and west. Okay, so for the east side, the sun rises in the east, meaning in the morning you're going to have a warm glow, not much glare in that side of the building, and a nice ambience of warm light. This would be pretty ideal for breakfast rooms, master bedrooms, or even family rooms if you're going to be spending a lot of time in those areas in the morning. And to the west side of a structure or a building or home, wherever it may be, you'll get a lot of actual harsh lighting or a lot of glare, bright indirect sunlight. Oftentimes, the west side of a structure might not even have windows at all, but if they do, you can have shaders that you can adjust to reduce that glare that comes in. And then you have your north side of a building or structure, and this is where a lot of the shade comes in. A lot of it is very cool compared to the west side, so a lot of a cooler environment. So maybe offices or conference rooms would be ideal in this general direction, because you don't want glare or glare onto your computer screens or your projectors. It wouldn't be really ideal. And then in the last direction, which is south, it's the best for receiving the most direct sunlight throughout the entire day. So this would be pretty nice to have in a foyer of a home, or let's say a lobby of a hotel, to have that nice consistent light that's basking in the environment to warm up and create this welcoming environment for visitors to come in. Now, although these are general descriptions as for the four different directions, it's not always applicable for every space that is going to be designed. Because let's say someone who's living in Canada wanted to remodel their office. They might want to consider having more windows in general on all sides of a structure, because compared to the amount of sunlight that we get here in the south, it's not much for them. So they should try to maximize the amount of heat that they could get into their space, and so should you. Let's say you decide to move somewhere that's more like north of Georgia, and it's just not that much light going on. You get more of like that, let's say rainy or snowy weather, then you should consider more of those windows. But if you live, more south, or if you decide to move to South America or something like that, then you consider less of that, because it's going to be a lot of glare, a lot of heat, it gets super hot. So you just have to gauge based on where your space actually is. Now, on the opposite side of the natural light spectrum is the artificial lights, which are produced through lamps or other light fixtures. These include direct lighting, so either from pendants or spotlights, or indirect lighting, which are more of like the sconces or wall washers and troughers. And when you're in the process of choosing the type of lighting for your space, you need to be careful and remember that sometimes just less is more. And it's great to have nice and a nice bright and interior environment, but sometimes it's not always necessary because it can cause a lot of glare. And if you're already having glare coming from outside and glare coming from inside, it's just not ideal. It's gonna put a lot of strain on your eyes. So stairways and hallways typically look very nice with sconces and wall washers, creating sort of this soft, warm glow that would guide, let's say, the inhabitant from point A to point B. So, bottom of the stairs to the very top. And then center points like dining rooms or foyers would be a little bit different from that. These are spaces that would, you want to create more of a pizzazz, direct lighting. And then you have common spaces like living rooms or offices or maybe even bedrooms where you would want more of an even distribution of light. So some form of ceiling hung light, maybe with a diffuser to lessen that glare, that would be pretty ideal. And then with all of these in mind, you can add in little accents of lights here and there, like, wall washers, up lights, down lights to create a more dynamic ambience of lighting. But like I said, don't overdo it because too much is just too much glare. And then you're kind of just taking away from the whole experience of it if you're putting lights in all sorts of directions and then all sorts of light types as well. So for artificial light types, there are a lot that exist out there in the lighting design field, but a decent amount are actually not as popular anymore due to just better technology over the course of the years. LED lights and compact fluorescents are very popular and high in demand now and has been in the last couple of years, especially because they last very long. You can adjust the color temperature if you like, and they're energy efficient, so that's always nice. Whereas, let's say incandescents, which are more of the traditional yellow lights that you've seen probably in the past, they do take up a lot of more energy and they can be wasteful since they die a lot more frequently compared to LED lights. And then, there are other light types such as halogens, which use a gas, so, that's not really the safest thing. And there are fluorescent tubes, which are pretty nice for, a nice even lighting if you're looking for that. And a few others out there as well. But like I said, they're not very popular anymore because maybe their lifespan is too short or the materials made are either toxic or just not very ideal for our environments now. My main advice when you're choosing lights in general is to ask yourself, is the color comfortable for you? Some lights, are white, some are yellow, so you want to have a kind of a balance in there. Do you want it to be a certain color temperature? And always keep in mind, like, if there's a way to adjust the light's brightness, how would you do that? Maybe through a dimmable switch or a diffuser, possibly, to reduce that glare that would be emitting from these light sources. Okay, so the last aspect of designing that I'll touch base on is more or less on the aesthetic side, but since it's still, a technical course, I'll talk about the different types of things and the recommendations with choosing what would be the most beneficial for you. So the first thing I want to talk about is walls. So walls can have three main types of coverings. You have paint, you have wallpaper, and then you have wall covering. Wallpaper and wall covering are pretty similar, but within each of those categories, there's more subcategories. So it's nice to kind of divide that. So within the paint category, there are actually 5 main paint type levels that are categorized based on their sheen or their glossy level. Flat is the lowest, it's the first one. It's best used in areas that, won't have a lot of wear and tear. Examples would be master bedrooms, dining rooms that aren't really used often, and maybe closets. And the flat level is also good with hiding imperfections, such as dents or scratches. Then you have Eggshell, that's the next sheen level. Usually recommended for spaces that don't really get that much wear and tear either, but it is prone to fading or at risk of getting dirty. And those would be spaces like foyers, living rooms, guest bedrooms, and hallways. Because sometimes kids, they run past and they have like a crayon in their hand and they just kind of drag it along the hallway or wherever. And this level is a little bit easier to clean compared to flat, but not the best in terms of cleaning. The third one is satin. This is where things get a little bit more, I would say, heavy duty, and it's used in areas with higher traffic, people coming in and out a lot, and will receive a decent amount of wear and tear. So that could be entryways, kitchens, and definitely kids' bedrooms, because, like I said, the kids be drawing on their walls. And then the fourth one is semi-gloss. This is a common sheen level used in areas that not only have high traffic, but also withstands heat, humidity, and washing. So bathrooms, restrooms for commercial areas, kitchens, and maybe door trims are pretty good examples. And the last level is gloss, sorry. It's the highest durability of the sheen levels. It's used less common, but you'll find it more on window trims, door trims, or around, let's say, fireplaces to create a certain aesthetic so that area doesn't look as flat. And this one does tend to look a little bit more fake, kind of like plastic-like. So it's not as popular as the other sheen levels. I think most people go up to semi-gloss as the highest, but gloss is an option. It's there, super easy to clean and wash because it's just like plastic. You just wipe it and it just comes right off. Okay, now for the wallpaper category, it's probably the simplest because it's exactly as what it sounds like. It's paper that is stuck onto walls as a covering. So wallpaper is great because they have, there's a wide variety of designs and patterns. It's pretty unlimited because it's basically just ink on paper. So it can mimic almost any design that you can think of, like wood, paisleys, and entire scenery, repeating geometric patterns, floral, whatever you want, you name it. And there are different ways to attach wallpaper to your walls, and that includes paste the wall, paste the paper, and peel and stick, which makes it super easy to remove and replace, just wallpaper in general, like overall. So paste the wall is when the adhesive is applied directly to the wall before you hang on the wallpaper. Paste the paper is the opposite. It's more of the traditional way when you apply the adhesive to the wallpaper instead of the wall. And then sometimes, the paper may expand, so you should put up like piece by piece to make sure it dries and then it looks fine, and then you apply the next section. And then the last one is peel and stick. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's just wallpaper that's kind of like a sticker where you remove the backing and then you just stick it onto the wall. So easy to remove as well. And then compared to paint, which has chemicals in it and it can chip away, look worn down over time, wallpaper can last up to 15 years. Then it can cover up any imperfections or dents or scratches, and some of them are even washable. So that's always nice to have. And out of the three wall finish categories, wallpaper is probably the most eco-friendly since it can be manufactured from natural materials. Like you can have wallpaper that's bamboo, you can have it as linen, banana leaves, I've actually seen those, and recycled materials. So there's that. And then the adhesives don't always contain harmful chemicals either. And once you need to replace it and have to rip it up, you can also recycle that. So makes it super eco-friendly. Okay, now within the wall covering category, this one's a little bit more broad because wall coverings can be made out of really just about anything. There's vinyl, there's foil, there's flock, which is kind of like a fuzz. There's wood, acoustics, cork, and a bunch of others out there. The difference between wall covering and wallpaper is that these are typically more durable and they have several, kind of categories that fall into this main category. The first one is vinyl coated. They have a paper in which the decorative vinyl surface is sprayed onto that paper or coated on. Then the second one is paperback vinyl or solid sheet. And that's basically, it has a paper pulp base and then it's laminated to a vinyl surface. This is very durable, super scrubbable, and it's very easy to clean. And the last one is fabric backed vinyl, which is a woven fabric base that is laminated onto the vinyl surface. This one is typically softer compared to paperback. It's still durable, but it looks less, I would say, textured. It's very smooth. So depending on what type of style you're going for, you can decide between paperback or fabric back. Okay, the last sort of area is floors. So for floors, the most popular types of flooring range from either vinyl to wood and maybe carpet. Out of the four, tiles are probably the most durable. They're perfect for kitchens, foyers. They're safe, they're non-toxic, but they're harder to install due to their weight, and they're less flexible because pieces are already created as the shape that they're supposed to be, like squares or rectangles, whatever it may be. And you would have to cut them to your liking if you want some sort of organic shape for your space that you're trying to put it in. And vinyl is great because the second one, vinyl, it's tactile, it's flexible, it's easy to cut and arrange compared to tiles, and it's easy to take up as well if you want to switch things out, change it, replace it, whatever it may be. And it can mimic the look of just about anything. It can mimic tiles, it can mimic wood, or other materials that actually having to be that material. And then third is wood. This is a always popular choice because of the natural aesthetic, the beauty of how something looks in its natural state, and it's eco-friendly, it's healthy if you're buying expensive wood, but it will mold if it comes in contact with water or if it isn't treated well. So if you're buying a wood laminate or an engineered version, consider the thickness of the wood and the ability to again deal with mold, which usually isn't a problem anymore because engineered wood usually have this infused chemicals in them that kind of help resist the mold and last longer. And then the last type is carpet, something that a lot of traditional homes and apartments have, and you probably have it in your shelter as well. Um, and you might also have noticed that there are actually different types of carpets. There's loop cut, and then there's just cut. Loop and cut, sorry, not loop cut. So loop carpet, as you can imagine, it's when the individual fuzzes that you see are actually looped to the backing of the carpet. So short loops are good in high traffic areas like living rooms, but longer loops have a nice aesthetic for, let's say, your bedroom. And you probably want like a shorter loop in living rooms anyways, because you don't want your kids having dragging their toys around and then tripping within the loops or anything like that. But in a bedroom, you can kind of minimalize that because they'll probably be spending most of their time in bed or playing just on the floor and not really running around too much, hopefully. And then there's cut piles, and that's when the yarn tips are cut, so there's actually no loops at all. And these tend to be a little bit denser, softer, have more of a formal look, and they're common for living rooms, hotel lobbies, or even bedrooms. So aside from the carpet style, there's also the consideration of what the carpet is actually made of. So the fibers. The first one is nylon. It's probably the most popular. It's durable, resistant to wear. It fights stains, mold, and mildew really well. And overall, it works nice in really any traffic environment. Sorry. The second is polypropylene or olefin. I would call it a second place winner. It's also resistant to moisture, mold, and mildew. It's also super resistant to stains as well. But on the downside, it's not as soft compared to nylon. And it collects dirt pretty easily. And it's a lot cheaper. So you probably see those a lot in commercial settings like lobbies where they have those. And then, a bunch of dirt collects where the doorways and entryways are. And the third one is polyester. It's a material that has recently kind of surfaced into the marketplace because it's man-made. It's a fiber that is hypoallergenic. Some of them can be recycled from plastic water bottles, so that's pretty nice. It makes it pretty eco-friendly. But some downsides is that it gets flattened pretty easily, and oil stains are a bit tougher to get out compared to the other two. And then fourth, we have acrylic, which is a material that's usually used as an inexpensive alternative to wool. Wool is probably the best kind. And since it resists moisture and mildew, that's also nice as well. But it's not widely as available, and it isn't as durable as the other three. And then last but not least, you have wool. And wool is the best of the best material for carpet. It's soft, it's long lasting, it's durable, it resists stains, it's eco-friendly because it's a natural material, and it doesn't cause allergic reactions. But on the downside, It's very expensive and it can be prone to mold and mildew. So you kind of have to gauge which one you want based upon the cost and let's say the resistant to mold or mildew or whatever it may be. Okay, and there's one last thing I want to note before ending this section, and it's that all of these things do this thing called off-gassing. So off-gas is basically the aftermath of installing or applying these materials, and the chemicals are just released into the air. It's kind of inevitable because paints have chemicals in them. Carpets and vinyl and some fabric backings have finishes infused into them that are actually toxic if we smell it in when they're first installed, but they do reduce significantly over time. The safest materials are always, the natural materials. So you have paper, wood, recycled fabric, or woven materials, but those are also the most prone to damage compared to vinyl or acrylic, which are super durable, but they emit those volatile organic compounds, the off-gassing. So typically, if you're installing something that would emit a chemical, it's best to ask the installer or the company that you're working with, what's the safe period for the chemicals to emit all the bad stuff into the air before you occupy the space. If this is a new home, I would want to say maybe a month's time is safe, but you can wait longer. That's probably for the better. But I do know that a lot of companies nowadays are working more towards non-toxic backings and finishes for vinyl and carpet. So, these things aren't much of a concern anymore compared to 15, 20 years ago. So, but it still doesn't hurt to ask, right? To make sure that you won't be getting sick after they install these things into your spaces. So, with me talking about all these technical things about designing and why is it even important to consider these aspects at all into your home? So, first things first, it's just nice to get into the habit of understanding why we do certain things and how we can improve our living environment. Because, as humans, we spend about I would say 80% of our day indoors, and especially with COVID and the pandemic around, that number can even be a lot more because some people they work remotely from home. So it it's just nice to understand that, oh, am I getting sick because the weather? Am I sick because it's the flu? Do I have the cold or something like that? Or am I sick because just simply the stuff that's existing in my home making me sick? And then indoor air quality, has always been an issue since a lot of people don't know that these materials can off gas, some of them off gas more than others as well. So we end up inhaling all that bad stuff day in and day out, and it just accumulates into our respiratory system, and then we just get sick, and we don't really know why we get sick. So I hope that with this program, you can kind of have like a foundational understanding as to why some things are the way they are in our lives. And, we can live a healthier lifestyle and then it's just better for us in general, right? Because, if you or just living in your home and then you're consistently congested all the time, maybe it's not the weather, maybe you're not always having an allergic reaction, maybe it is something in your house that's causing you to have this reaction. So before I actually end the program, I want to ask you all to consider participating in a little design activity that I came up with so you can, kind of express yourself creatively and create this ideal home or space that you might come up with after considering all the things that I've talked about. Like I said, I want you to consider all the different aspects that I've presented to you throughout this whole little crash course. I'll give you a prompt, and then from there, if you can come up with a floor plan configuration with all the different ideas that have been discussed throughout the crash course, such as lighting, flooring, or wall finishes that you'd want into the space. So this is the prompt, and I'll read it out loud to you. So, a young artist from New York has decided to move to an apartment. The artist wishes to have a decently sized kitchen, enough space in the living area for at least 3 guests to come over occasionally, and a bedroom with a full master bathroom and a closet. Okay, so this is an example of a floor plan. So, I just want to give you a quick little rundown so I'm not just like throwing this at you and then you're like, what am I even supposed to do? But floor plans are basically when you cut a building in half horizontally, and then if you imagine yourself flying into the air and you look down, you probably see only the top things of your space. So you only see the top part of your door, the top part of your walls, your windows, and your bed. You won't be really seeing the side view or like obviously under it or anything like that. So to do this exercise, I'm gonna put a little link of a Google slide presentation that's editable that I created. And the link should be bit.ly/ID crash course. That's interior design crash course. And it'll allow you to edit and move the objects around on the floor plan. I'll show you in just a second. But I just wanted to talk about it a little bit before I actually go in there and show you. And you can make things bigger, smaller, rotate it, whatever you like. And I ask that each participant to edit only one slide, and if you want to add your name to it so people can see who you are, and then add a little description of why you configured it to however you did it, then you can also do that, but you don't have to if you don't want to. And there will be a key as to some of the basic symbols that are on the floor plan, and just kind of gauge and configure to the best of your ability. This isn't for a grade or anything. I just kind of want to see what you all come up with, especially after hearing about the technical side of interior design and why things should go where they are. And once you're done configuring the floor plan, if you want to come back to this video, and then we'll end the program from there. But before I do that, let's go and show you what it looks like. Okay. Okay, I believe it is sharing now. Okay, so on the first slide, again, I added the prompt just in case you wanted to see that. And I put in red, put a copy of the template slide if there's not enough, but I created like 20 of them, so that shouldn't be a problem. But again, if it runs out, just take a copy of one of these and then duplicate it so that you can have a version that you can edit on. But on the second slide is the key. So let's say if you go to your slide, let's say you type your name up here. I don't know, just Alex or something like that. You can edit that up there. And then you want to start by clicking on any of these images. I have made it so that they're all individualized, so you just click it. And then to move it to here, you just click and then drag. And if you want to resize it, you grab the little corner pieces. Any corner works. And then you just drag it to make it bigger, drag out to make it bigger, drag in to make it smaller. But for the most part, the beds and the sofas and stuff like that, they don't really need to be resized. Most of the things that need to be resized are just the walls. So, oh, grab the wrong one. Like if I grab this wall right here, if I need it to be longer, I'll grab it by one of the ends, pull it out to make it longer. And if I need it to be short, then I just pull it in to make it shorter. So that's basically what you need to resize. But for the most part, oh, let me show you how to rotate. It's this little handle up here. You kind of just, when it gets the crosshair, you just drag it around and then you can rotate it. So there's that. And I'll show you my example just real quick. I have a little description over here as to why I put things where they're supposed to go based on my little sketch here. But you're going to have two floors. The first floor is, just completely flat. You walk in, you have this little mud room that you can put your jackets and shoes in. On the other side is a little kitchenette. You got your stovetop, sink, refrigerator, walk-in pantry. Further down is the living space, a little dining room here. And then you have the main living room space with the love seat and the sofa. And then if you go upstairs, you have this, little spacious bedroom space area, walk-in closet, and then full bathroom. So pretty straightforward, right? If you go to your slide and it gets a little too confusing for you and you just like I don't know what to put on the first floor or what to put on the second floor, then just stick to the first floor. It's totally fine. It's up to you. I mean, ultimately, maybe you don't want an apartment that is lofted and has two floors. Maybe you just want one floor. And that's completely fine too. But just click and drag wherever you want certain things to go, and then that's really it. Okay? And then let's go back to the presentation. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you have done all that before coming back to the video, and if you didn't, that's totally fine. You can just continue watching the video and do it afterwards, or if you did, do that and you're back. Welcome back. But I just wanted to say that hopefully by the time you do your, I guess, version of the configuration, maybe a couple of other people have done it. And although, let's say that a couple other people have did their configuration and you've looked at it, right? It's probably not the exact same as yours, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer to this. Like, we get the same exact prompt, but we all have created probably some sort of different configuration because we all design unintentionally all the time. And maybe it makes sense to me to have a door in this bottom right-hand corner, but it makes sense to you to put the door in the top-hand corner, or like the bed should be rotated a certain way, diagonally, instead of just parallel to the wall. That's completely up to you. That's your design, it's your style, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And do note that I've actually skipped the whole technical design phase or asked you to come up with all that. So with the ideating and prototyping. So if you had imagined that you had actually gone through that process, you probably would have come up with many more ideas that could, work even better than the one that you just created. And in school, when I was still in school and working in the field, for one, let's say, conference room that I had to come up with, I would come up with probably like 20 different configurations. And then from there, you have to decide, does this really work? Does this not really work? And then pick and choose the ones that do work, or like different aspects that do work, combine it all into one, and then create this sort of master file that, oh, this is the final one. So instinctively, we do a little designing here and there all the time, and we probably don't even think much of it. But everyone's a little creative in their own way, and I hope that you continue to think outside of the box and just keep on designing your day-to-day life. Even if that just means, clearing your desk, and today you're gonna decide that I'm putting my pencils over here, my water bottle over here, just for the convenience and the sake of my sanity. That's still designing. It doesn't have to be like the pretty stuff where you go and you paint and whatever. Of course, that's designing, but even the simple things of your convenience, like to your convenience, that is designing as well. Okay, so, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I've kept you here for way too long, but I hope that you're able to take away at least something interesting from this crash course, and maybe you want to share it with a friend or a family. I think that, the smarter you are with choosing what's healthy and saves money and works for you, the healthier your lifestyle can be. And just thanks again for watching, and maybe I'll see you all around at the Wallpaper Branch. Bye!